82-year-old Martha Reynolds sat by the window of her weathered Vermont cottage, a steaming cup of chamomile tea cradled in her fragile hands. Outside, the early spring sun bathed the landscape in golden light, but inside, a quiet ache filled the air. Her eyes wandered to the faded photograph on the mantel, her and Harold, 40 years ago, smiling beneath a canopy of fruit trees they had planted together with love and dreams for the future. The orchard was once their sacred space. Together they had nurtured 5 trees, apple, banana, papaya, blueberry, and pomegranate, each symbolizing something dear. 5 fruits for 5 decades of health, Harold used to say with a wink, slicing apples for her lunch. He was always the heart of their routine, reminding her every day, Martha, food can heal. Especially when it comes from love. But 2 years ago, Harold passed suddenly. Since then, the trees had stood neglected, their branches heavy with forgotten offerings. The once vibrant garden was now a tangled mess of weeds and silence. The joy of harvesting, sharing smoothies on the porch, laughing over blueberry stains on their clothes, gone, like the autumn breeze that once carried their laughter. Last week, her doctor's words echoed sharply, "Your heart's tired, Martha. Your bones need more than tea and toast. Fruits, especially those rich in fiber, antioxidants, potassium, you need them every single day now." She'd nodded then, but deep inside, she felt empty. What good was health without purpose? Without someone to share the sweetness of life with? She stared at the orchard, now dusted with blossoms, and whispered, "What's the point of fruit, when there's no one left to taste it with me?" Just then, a gust of wind rustled the branches outside, sending a single red apple tumbling down onto the garden path. It thudded softly against the earth, simple, small, but a quiet sign that perhaps, something was about to change. The rain came down in soft sheets the next morning, turning Martha's front path into a winding stream of puddles. She stood at the kitchen counter, quietly stirring oatmeal she had no real appetite for. The silence of the house pressed in, until a sudden, timid knock interrupted it. Opening the door, Martha found a soaking wet boy no older than 12. His backpack sagged under the weight of books, and his sneakers squished with every shift of his feet. "I'm sorry to bother you, ma'am," he said, shivering slightly. "I missed the school bus. I was helping my grandma, and I lost track of time. Could I wait here, till the rain lets up?" Martha hesitated only a moment. There was something earnest in his eyes, something that reminded her of Harold as a boy. "Of course," she said, stepping aside. "Come in before you catch a cold." As the boy dried off with a towel, he noticed the fruit bowl on the table, mostly empty except for 1 apple and a too-ripe banana. "You grow your own fruits?" he asked, eyes drifting to the window that overlooked the orchard. "Used to," Martha replied. "Haven't picked any in a while." "My grandma eats fruit every day," he said, warming his hands on the mug of tea she'd given him. "Papaya for her knees, blueberries for her brain, apples for her tummy. I make her fruit bowls every morning." Martha blinked. "You do?" He nodded proudly. "She says they keep her dancing. She's 72 and still does Zumba." A laugh escaped Martha's lips before she could catch it. It felt strange, but good. "Maybe I should have started Zumba a decade ago," she joked. The boy grinned. "You still can." His name was Theo. Over the next hour, they shared tea, talked about fruits, and swapped recipes. When the rain slowed, Martha led him out to the orchard. With her hand on a low branch, she smiled and said, "Let's see if these trees still remember how to give." What began as a rainy morning favor turned into a daily ritual. Every day before school, Theo arrived at Martha's doorstep, sometimes with a fresh basket, sometimes with a story, always with a grin. Together, they walked into the once-forgotten orchard, now blooming with color and purpose. Martha, who had barely touched fruit in months, began slicing apples with steady hands. "Good for digestion," Theo would remind her, handing her a shiny red one. He carefully peeled bananas, potassium for your heart. While sprinkling fresh blueberries into a bowl, saying, "These little ones are brain boosters, remember?" Martha chuckled more these days, her voice no longer hoarse with loneliness. Her eyes, once dulled by grief, began to sparkle as if sunlight had returned to them. The orchard transformed with her spirit, bushes pruned, baskets hung, soil turned. Even the stubborn papaya tree began to bear sweet, orange fruit again. She started moving more too. Theo convinced her to stretch each morning before breakfast. "Only 10 minutes, he'd say, leading her in gentle routines his grandma did. "It helps your joints, especially after eating papaya." Neighbors started noticing. Mrs. Glenn from 2 doors down stopped by one afternoon. "You're glowing, Martha. What's your secret?" Martha simply smiled and pointed to the bowl of vibrant fruit in her hands, and Theo beside her. Soon, other children joined in. Theo had told his classmates about the fruit lady with the magic trees. They came in small groups, curious and eager. Martha began teaching them about nutrition, sharing Harold's old garden journals, and letting them pick fruit to take home to their own grandparents. The orchard was alive again, not just with the rustle of trees, but with laughter, stories, and hands reaching out in kindness. Martha once believed her best years had ended with Harold's passing. But now, surrounded by eager young faces and bowls brimming with color, she realized something profound: her second spring had just begun. Winter arrived gently that year, coating the orchard in soft frost and slowing the morning rituals. But the warmth inside Martha's home never faded. Each day, the children still came, bundled in scarves and mittens, cheeks red with cold, laughter warming the kitchen walls. Theo never missed a morning. He and Martha had become inseparable, a boy with boundless energy, and a woman whose spirit had been reignited by fruit and friendship. But one quiet morning in January, the children stood outside longer than usual. The door didn't open. The curtains didn't part. Theo, heart pounding, gently knocked. No answer. He used the key Martha had given him, just in case. The house was still and peaceful. There, in her favorite chair by the window, Martha sat wrapped in her shawl, a half-finished letter to Theo resting on her lap. Her eyes were closed, lips slightly curved in a soft, serene smile. She was gone. News spread quickly. The town mourned. Not just for a woman, but for the joy and healing she had brought back to their lives. At her small memorial in the orchard, Theo read the letter aloud. "My sweet Theo. Thank you for bringing sunshine to an old woman's winter. You reminded me that love doesn't die, it just takes new forms. This orchard is yours now. Keep feeding hearts, not just bellies." Martha's will had one final request: that the orchard become a community garden for children and elders alike. And so, the Legacy Bowl program began. Every morning, families gathered to prepare fruit bowls from the 5 trees Martha and Harold once planted: apple, banana, papaya, blueberry, and pomegranate. A carved wooden sign now stands at the orchard gate. Fruit feeds the body, but kindness feeds the soul. Martha Reynolds. Years later, Theo, now a young nutritionist, still visits the orchard. He speaks at schools, teaching kids about the 5 fruits and the woman who turned them into medicine, memories, and magic. And every time he peels a papaya or slices an apple, he smiles, knowing that love, when shared, never truly fades.